Welcome to this mini lesson on film techniques. This is part of a series on film techniques, so make sure you have watched the introduction video before you launch into this one. And there are 3 other videos on their way, so make sure you watch those as they come out. So today in this lesson, we are learning to understand the different ways filmmakers transition between shots as they edit videos and the effects of these various techniques. So our main focus is editing, but we're not going to focus on all of editing, just shot transitions today. So editing refers to the changes made to raw video footage after it's been filmed. So if you've watched the first video in the series, Introduction to Film Techniques, you'll understand that shots are cut together to make scenes. The different techniques that editors use to do this will be the focus of the lesson today. So here are 5 techniques that we're going to look at. A common technique is cutting on action. Action sequences are usually filmed in lots of small chunks and then cut together in editing to make it look like one long scene. Cutting on action creates the illusion that what we're seeing actually happened. They also make action scenes seem much more intense as we continue cutting from action to action to action to more action. And so I'm going to give you an example of this from The Matrix. You're going to see heaps of cutting on action, and then we'll have a bit of a talk about one of those specific cuts and how that helps create the illusion of reality.
Back up! Stand back up!
Let's just watch one small section of that scene again, and we'll talk about it a bit more. This cartwheel is a great example of cutting on action. We see Neo start his cartwheel with his hand landing on the gun. Then we skip to a close-up of his hand taking hold of the gun, then back to what appears to be the original shot. Let's have another watch, but this time I've trimmed out the close-up of his hand. you can see that the start of the cartwheel, the close-up of the hand grabbing the gun, and the end of the cartwheel were all shot quite separately. However, because of the skilled editing, these shots have been perfectly cut together to make it seem like Neo is grabbing a gun mid-cartwheel and then continuing to shoot up the place. Keanu Reeves is a beast, but I don't think even he is that skilled. Alrighty, so that's cutting on action, and let's now move on to cutaways. Cutaways do exactly what their name implies. They cut away from the main action to focus on something else, perhaps in the environment or to help us understand what's going on. So usually cutaways interrupt a continuously filmed shot and they return back to that shot after the cutaway. And the purpose is to add meaning. Whatever is cut away to adds some sort of meaning to the shot that's being interrupted. So let's check out an example from Harry Potter, The Order of the Phoenix.
Used properly, the power of our clemency will help shield you from access or influence. In these lessons, I will attempt to penetrate your mind. You will attempt to resist. Prepare yourself. Gentlemen. Concentrate, Potter. Focus.
So we saw Harry's memories, but to do this, the editor had to cut away from the main action of the scene to inside Harry's mind. It would be hard to understand what was happening in the scene without seeing Harry's memories as the cutaway provides. It also adds heaps more to the story and helps us as an audience to understand Harry's character. Let's now have a look at cross-cutting, which is when two or more scenes are combined into one. So it's when an editor transitions back and forth between two different scenes. They might be happening in two different places or two different times, and it brings those two different scenes together into the one scene. And it's a great way to show two different parts of a story at the same time in a way that the audience will understand. And it's a great thing for editors to use when they don't want to reveal one thing before another. They can reveal both of those things kind of at the same time. So watch the start of this clip from Batman, The Dark Knight.
Mount the car!
Harvey, just in case, I want to tell you something, okay?
Don't think like that, Rachel. They're coming for you.
I know they are, but I don't want them to.
Now, as you can see, we're flicking between four different sets of characters. We've got Batman, we've got the police, we've got Rachel, and we've got Harvey. Now, Batman and the police are on missions to different locations to try and rescue Rachel and Harvey. So Batman's going to rescue one of them, and the police are going to rescue the other, or at least attempt to. So note that we cross-cut from Batman to Rachel and back to Batman again. This gives us the impression that Batman is heading for Rachel's location and that she will be rescued by him. Let's see what happens.
I don't want to live without you, and I do have an answer for you. And my answer is yes.
No! No! No, not me! Why are you coming for me? No! Rachel! Rachel!
Harvey. Okay.
Rachel!
Harvey, it's okay. It's all right. Listen. Someone...
Oh no, poor Rachel. Batman was heading to the wrong place and rescued Harvey instead. The police didn't make it in time and, well, Rachel is no more. Cross-cutting was used here to deceive the audience. We were tricked into thinking Rachel was going to be rescued because Batman, or it looked like Batman, was going to arrive at her location. And because we were deceived in this way, It makes the movie a little more unpredictable and keeps us guessing at what will happen. We don't think we've already figured out the plot, as often happens with movies. Okay, so that is cross-cutting. Let's now move on to montages. Montages are often used to condense the development of part of a story into a short space of time. So they involve a series of shots that obviously happen at various different times or over a long period of time, but are condensed into the one short scene. Montages often don't have dialogue, so there's no talking. Instead, they've got non-diegetic music playing that highlights what's happening. This allows the movie makers to include a crucial part of the story that might take several scenes if they were going to film absolutely everything, but they've taken all that and they're just condensing it into one so that they can get what might take half an hour jammed into the space of maybe a couple of minutes. Let's have a look at a montage from Shrek. It shows us the development of Shrek and Fiona's relationship. So it condenses something that usually takes a long period of time, falling in love, into the space of a couple of minutes.
My beloved monster and me, we go everywhere together, wearing a raincoat that has 4 sleeves, gets us through all kinds of weather. She will always be the only thing, come between me and the awful sting. Comes from living in a world that's so thin.
Right, the last editing technique that we're going to look at today is called the graphic match. Now, the graphic match involves a transition between two shots that look alike at the transition point. And so it shows the audience that there's some sort of connection between these two things, and it encourages the audience to wonder and guess what that connection might be. So watch this transition from up, and then we'll have a bit of a talk about the purpose of this particular graphic match. So this graphic match revolved around the character Carl. He looks and moves exactly the same in both shots. However, his surroundings change completely, even while he stays the same, and that prompts us to think about the meaning of this transition. So the first shot is of his wife's funeral, and the second of him is walking up the steps into his house. So we're forced to realise that now he's walking into an empty house without his wife. She doesn't live there anymore. And that kind of invokes a sense of loneliness and makes the scene even sadder than it was already. So these ideas of emptiness, loneliness and sadness would still be present without the graphic match, but perhaps less noticeable. So the graphic match highlights or accentuates the sadness of this scene. We've not covered every editing technique in this video, but you should have a firm grasp on a few different types of transitions. And when you see a transition in a movie, maybe you'll be able to start thinking about why the editor chose that particular transition. So you might be able to discuss how it helps unpack the themes or sets the mood or even just helps tell the story. Make sure To consolidate your learning, you download the PDF activity from the description below, and you can also check out the other videos in the series. Don't forget to head over to our rival channel, Al and Robbo's Amazing Maths and Science channel, for all things maths and science. Thanks for listening. We hope to see you back soon.